back. My name is Charlie, and today we're going to start doing some end of the year content. I love this stuff. I love this time of year for making videos. I just think the wrap-ups are really fun. I think the goal type videos like this one, this is going to be a reflection on my 2025 goals. I think these kinds of videos are just fun. So we're just going to do it now. This video is going to be me talking about my goals for 2025, looking back kind of up till this present moment and see how many of them I accomplished. And then in another video, I'll be forecasting my 2026 goals. That'll honestly probably happen like in January, but that's okay. For now, I just want to take a look back and see how we did. I will say in 2026, my goals, I think I'm going to structure them differently. I'm going to try to do, I think, like quarterly goals as well as just like yearly goals, like goals that I want to accomplish for the year. Because this year, I didn't know how to do like my quarterly wrap-ups necessarily, because I just set a goal for 2025 to read a blank book. And at the quarterly check-ins, I was like, well, I didn't do it this quarter, but I did do it. So I don't think that was very interesting. So anyway, I'm gonna try to break it up in 2026 differently than I did in 2025, but whatever. We're here in 2025, we're at the end, and I want to see how we did. I'd like to preface this really quickly with just me saying, as always, I don't take this very seriously. I don't think you should take your goals for your like hobbies all that seriously. If you're trying to improve at that hobby, like sure, that's good. But I think your goals should be, at least for reading, for me, I like to view my goals less as goals and more for just like, it's supposed to broaden me. I'm trying to branch out more, and having it written down on a list in the form of like these goals just helps me to step outside of my comfort zone every now and then. So that's really the main goal. It's just to read more diversely than I normally would without having set these goals. I didn't set goals one year and I read like just fantasy, which is fine. I love that. I had a great year. Those are fun books. Those are the books that I like. That's my favorite genre. So I don't need to branch out. I wanted to, so that's what we did here. So I have my list of goals here, and we're gonna go through them. The first goal that I set for myself in 2025 is that I want to read more nonfiction. More in this case, and honestly in a lot of these cases, is more than zero. In 2024, I read no nonfiction. In 2025, I wanted to read at least one, and I did it. I read exactly one nonfiction book. That was The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs by Stephen Brusette, that author. And it was great. I had a great time with it. I should read more nonfiction because I do always like it. Every time I read it, like, the last nonfiction I read before this one, I think was in 2024, I read The Wager. And again, I loved it. I was blown away by that book. Highly recommend The Wager. But this was awesome. It's just a book about dinosaurs, but written really well. I really enjoyed it. There were a lot of parts that were less about dinosaurs and more about paleontology, which is interesting, but it just wasn't, those weren't the pieces that I was mainly there for. They were cool. There was some name dropping that I don't know those names, so that's not super interesting to me. But for the most part, it was really good. I would highly recommend that book. Really, really good. Accomplished my goal with it. I also wanted to read a memoir. So, technically this counts as that first goal too, but subsection of nonfiction being a memoir. So I did that. So separately, I accomplished this goal with, again, reading one memoir, but that's fine. That was the goal. I wanted to read at least one, and I did it. So Jeanette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom Died, 5 stars, fantastic book, important book, impactful book. If you, like me, grew up watching Jeanette McCurdy on TV, I felt personally like I kind of owed it to her to read this book in a way. At least after the book, I was like, oh wow, I'm so glad that I did that, because I, as a kid, unknowingly, obviously, like I'm not the problem, right? But I did feed into it a little bit. It feels like sort of like she was acting, she didn't want to, and there were bad things happening to her in her life, and I didn't know about it. I was just like she's funny on my TV, right? And that's, again, I'm not a villain for doing that, but it did feel to me, I felt good after having finished the book, feeling like, okay, now I fully understand and I can kind of recontextualize that show in my head and just, I don't know, I have a better understanding, a better respect for child actors now, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. It was a really good book. I'm glad that I read it. I think that is a goal that I want to carry on because I did, again, feel good about having read it, which was cool. You know, I read a fantasy book and I'm like, oh, that was fun. I had fun with that. This was not fun. I did not have like fun reading it. It was hard. It was a hard read, but somehow it felt important. Well, it is important. It's important to hear these stories. It's important that these stories get out in the world. It's important that this book did really well. So I'm just glad that I did it. I want to keep doing that. Read more nonfiction and more memoirs in particular, and hear more about people's lives that I didn't know about. I think that's cool. That was fun. Not fun. Again, not fun. Important. I also wanted to read a non-science fiction or fantasy work of fiction. So like genre fiction, but not those two genres, because that's where I spend most of my time, is in primarily fantasy and then sometimes science fiction. So I wanted to just try other fiction. There's a lot of fiction out there that I'd never touch, you know, mysteries, thrillers, and all sorts of things. So I did that. I mean, I read a couple horror books. That kind of counts, but a lot of horror books are also fantasy, so maybe that doesn't really count. I read Lincoln in the Bardo, which, like, similarly, you know, it's not like a magic system, separate, you know, different world from our own, that type of fantasy, but it's ghosts, right? Like the main characters are almost all ghosts. So that felt a little too fantasy for that to like count here. I guess it depends on your beliefs and stuff like that, but I don't know. Goodreads probably shows fantasy under Lincoln in the Bardo is my guess. But I also did read And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer, which is a beautiful short story by Frederick Bachman, dealing with the realities of like dementia or Alzheimer's. I'm not sure exactly what the target was off the top of my head, but those sorts of things like memory loss, and that is something that is near and dear to my heart. This story was very cathartic for me. Like reading it, I feel like I got a lot of closure on things in my own life. It gives you the perspective of the person in it, and it is, you know, it's written in a way where, you know, you're kind of in our character's head for a while, right? Like, so it's not all grounded in reality, right? Like there are these elements of it where, you know, you're seeing what they're thinking, right? He's picturing himself on a bench talking to his son, for example, right? Like that's in his head, right? So there are those elements, but I feel like it gave me a really interesting lens. Like I got to look at Alzheimer's through the eyes of somebody that has it, and one version of what that reality might look like for those people. And again, really, I don't know, it hit me really hard. It's a very short story, so I read it in one sitting. It was an audiobook. I was doing the dishes and I finished it before I finished the dishes, right? But for it to be that short and that powerful, it's just like, yeah, I don't know. If you have any ties to things like Alzheimer's, I would highly recommend this to you. I lent it to my mom. I made her read it, and she really enjoyed it. I think it's worth your time for sure. It was also my first time reading something by Frederick Bachman, so I really enjoyed that. I will be reading more of his work. I'm excited about that. This next goal is one that I shouldn't have put on my list, and I'm gonna brush over this because this was I don't know. I know in 2024 and probably the year prior, I read like a lot of Brandon Sanderson, so I wanted to make sure that I branched out, in my authors. So I set a goal in 2025 to read new to me authors, like to read more new to me authors. But I read like 50 something books this year, and I would guess that probably 10 of them are by authors that I've read previously. You know, that might be wrong, but most of the books that I read this year are by authors that I hadn't read before. I think I'm good at that, or I'm like bad at finishing series. So I start a lot of books, I start a lot of series, I read a lot of books by just a diverse group of authors. So I give this one a big fat check mark. I'm not going to go through the list of authors that I read this year that were new to me, just because, again, I'd be listing off like 40 authors, and I don't think you want to sit here and listen to me do that. So, but big check mark. I will not be carrying that on into next year. Not because I don't want to do it, but because I do it effortlessly. So it feels like it's a waste of time to write it down. This next one I will be carrying over. I want to read, like, I wrote, read new to me indie authors. That I didn't do, which is surprising to me, because I thought that would also just be a thing that happened, but I didn't do that, which is really disappointing, honestly, to me. I did read like a couple of books by indie authors, but nobody new to me. Like I had already read these authors before, and I was just reading more books by them. So that feels crummy. I want to support indie authors more, and I want to do that by branching out and reading new indie authors. So I totally failed that one, and I apologize to all indie authors that are out there. I'm gonna do better next year. I got to do that. I also wrote down that I wanted to read more arcs in 2025. More, I think, than zero. I don't know that I read any arcs. Oh no, I did. I did read arcs in 2024. What am I talking about? But yeah, I don't think I did that this year at all. But it's honestly, I didn't try. Like it wasn't a focus. I feel like I talked about it a few times as like, oh yeah, that'd be a cool thing to do. But then I like didn't apply for arcs. I didn't request arcs until the end of this year. When I started, I requested arcs and I got arcs. So I have a couple of arcs right now that I'm reading right this second. I'm reading Tomb of Tomes by Andrew Watson, which is a novella that's coming out soon. I'm also reading The Red Winter by Cameron Sullivan. And I have a couple on deck that I will be reading. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited to do that. It is the thing that I want to do, not just because I think it's cool to get books before they're released, right? Which it is. that is a reason to do this, but I want to do it because I do think that's helpful to those authors. I think it's nice to give that feedback early, and if I like that book, then hopefully I can help introduce that book to new people. Like the Red Winter by Cameron Sullivan. I had never heard of this book until a friend of mine read the arc of it and was like, oh, this is really, really good, and you all should check out this arc. And so I requested the arc and I got it for myself. That it's terrific. And so I want to be able to do that for more people. So hopefully if I finish this book, I can also spread the word. I mean, I already did just now, but I didn't finish it yet. I'm like 30-something% in. Really, really good so far though. Anyway, I like that goal. I think it's an important goal. I'm working on it right now. I didn't finish the book either book that I'm reading right now, so I can't give myself the check yet. I will likely finish the Tomb of Tomes by Andrew Watson by the end of this year, because it's a novella and I've already started it, so that will probably happen. But right now in this moment of filming, I did not do it. That gets an X. I also said I wanted to read more classics, because I read a number of classics in 2023, but 0 in 2024, and then in 2025 I read 1. So I get the check. I did accomplish this goal, but I'm surprised because there's like a lot of classics on my shelf upstairs that I want to read. Like I really, really want to read. Like I can't explain why, but I'm dying to read The Invisible Man, and it's right there, and it's so short. I just don't reach for it. Maybe it's because it's on the top shelf, and I do have to like physically reach for it. I don't know, is that why? I don't know why, but the only one that I read was Carmilla, which was good. It was fun. I'm glad that I read it. It's like, it predates Dracula, so it's definitely a classic. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why. I only read 1. I want to do better on that next year. I'll probably spill that over in next year as well, in some form. Another goal that I did accomplish is that I wanted to read a short story collection. I read Ken Liu's The Paper Menagerie and Other Stories. This was my first buddy read on the channel, which was a fantastic experience. I've been doing buddy reads on and off since then, and it was great. It was really great. some stories hit way harder than others. Some stories were like, they fell pretty flat for me. Like I didn't really care for them, but the overall experience was great. And some of the stories in there really made an impact. So I'm really glad that I read that. And it's a good way to try out a new author too, I think, which is, it was my first time reading anything by this author. So that was fun for me. And now I know that I do like his style for the most part. And I do want to read more of his stuff. And some of his books are quite large. So it's nice to know going in that I at least like the way that this author writes. So I did it, and I'm happy that I did. This next one, I didn't really do it. I sort of did parts of it. It was that I wanted to read a book that teaches me something. And I did, like I read the dinosaur book, right? The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs. And I learned things from that book, right? You learn something from a lot of books that you read. It feels like I have to do this. I want to do this goal with like a nonfiction, right? But not that one. I learned a couple fun facts about dinosaurs, but I'm not like a paleontologist now, right? So that doesn't feel like that counted. But I did read parts of a few books on writing, and I got some knowledge out of that. I got some tips and things like that they were super valuable, but I didn't finish them. So like I can't give myself the check really, because I did read something and I learned something, but I didn't finish the book. So I don't know. I'm not giving myself the check. I have to rethink this goal for next year. I like the spirit of it, but didn't happen fully, so I don't give myself credit for this one. This next one's also like a weird one. Like I don't like the way that I phrased this, or I guess it's just the goal as a whole I don't like. I had said that I wanted to find sci-fi that I loved, like read science fiction that I loved. And that's like a weird goal, because like the goal is really just to keep trying sci-fi. And like that part I did. Like I tried to read a lot of sci-fi books. I mean, not a lot, but what did I read? I read Dead Silence, which was fine. I read Empire of Silence, Lesser Dead, Howling Dark. All of those were fine. Lost Ark Dreaming, fine. Station 11 was fine. I tried. I tried to read science fiction, and I just didn't really connect with any of it. So like I failed the goal, but it's not because I wasn't trying to do it. I just don't think I like sci-fi as much as I want to. I'm gonna keep trying because I do want to like it. Does Star Wars count as sci-fi? It's like definitely got fantasy elements in there. Is it science fiction? Does that count enough? Because I did love the Star Wars books that I read. Death Troopers was like good. Like I enjoyed Death Troopers. I had a good time with that. It was short. It was a good time. I enjoyed that. But the Path of Destruction, like book 1 in the Darth Bane trilogy, that was like one of my top books of the year. I loved the experience of reading that book. That was so much fun. So if that counts in your book as like strictly sci-fi, which again, I'm not sure if Star Wars does count as sci-fi. I don't know. I mean, obviously it is sci-fi, but is it just sci-fi or is it sci-fantasy? And if it's sci-fantasy, does that count towards this goal? I don't know. I'm just talking a lot. I don't know if I count this goal as a check. I'm going to say I give it a check. Star Wars. Loved it. I don't like this goal. It's going away next year. The next goal is that I wanted to read another romance, or like more romance. I think I meant like romantasy when I wrote that goal, but I think I had said just romance. I wrote down here romance. But again, I think I meant romantasy. I don't know how you know if something counts as romantasy. I guess it has to be the main focal point of the story, right? Like I read The Fireborn Blade and its sequel, The Bloodless Princess, something like that. And there is a romance in that book, but I don't know that it felt like a romantasy to me. Like I don't think that the romance was at the forefront of the book. So I don't think that counts. I read Blood Over Brighthaven, and there is romance in that, but that, again, it's not like the focal point. It's background noise. It happens sort of. I don't know. I didn't like that book anyway, but it doesn't really count. So I don't know. I don't know if those count. I did read a couple books by T.J. Klune where the romance did feel like it was much more in the focus. I don't know. The books have a lot more than just this love story, though. So, I don't know if it counts. What's a romance book? I don't know what that means, Charlie. But yeah, I think you could count The House in the Cerulean Sea and Somewhere Beyond the Sea as romantasy. I think so, right? They're like cozy fantasy, but there's a lot of love there. I think it counts. I give myself the check. Yeah, I give myself the check. That's it. Is my rules. But I don't know. I don't know. It's not like, I feel like Fourth Wing feels like romantasy to me. But again, I don't know why. There's a lot of stuff that happens in that book that's not the romance. So I'm confused by genres, I guess. There's all this overlap, and I don't know what counts towards these goals. So I did this to myself. I make the rules. I should know the answers, but I don't. So anyway, I give myself the check. Let's move on. The final goal that I gave myself this year was that I wanted to read, or I wanted to go to a store and pick up a book and bring it home and read it without ever having heard of that book before I got to the store. And I did this partially, but I'm not gonna, I don't get the credit for this one. I went to a store and I did see a book on the shelf, and I had never heard of that book, and I picked it up, and the cover was insane, and it sounded interesting. I didn't look it up. I went straight home, and I started reading it, and I read probably like a third, maybe a quarter of the book, and it just wasn't very good, honestly. It's not that it was bad. It's just like, again, it was sci-fi, so already that's hard for me to get to like really into it. But it just, I don't know. I think it was a debut novel, and it felt like a debut novel, and then it was sci-fi, and it was doing a lot of things that I've seen before, and it was blah, blah, blah. I didn't care for it, and I have essentially DNF'd it. It's still like, I'm still technically, like the bookmark's still in it. It's still on my shelf of books that I'm currently reading, one of the 10 of them right now. But I'm not actively reading it. If I went back to it, I'd have to start over. So we'll say I DNF'd it. I don't think this counts. So I set myself 12 goals, and I accomplished, I think it's eight of them. I think I did 8. That's good. None of this matters. None of this means anything. Did I win? Sure. If I tally this up, I got like 1,000,000 points, and I won reading this year. Again, it's not about that. I don't feel good or bad about myself for having reached my goals. I'm glad that I set these goals because I do think that I branched out this year, and I did have a really good year of reading for me. In terms of like vibes alone, like I enjoyed reading this year, and that is my main goal, my main focus. I enjoyed it. Having this list helped me to pick the books that I wanted to read. I probably would not have read I'm Glad My Mom Died this year if I didn't write down that I wanted to read a memoir at the start of this year. So I'm really glad I did that. It was a 5-star read for me. It's one of the best books I read this year. That is the reason that I do this. That is the reason that I set these goals. So thank you for joining me on this. How'd you do on your goals? Let me know. I'm curious to hear what arbitrary rules did you set for yourself for 2025, and how did you do in your mission to achieve them? I am also looking forward to sometime in the next few weeks coming back here with more goals for 2026 and hearing the goals that you have for yourself there. But that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will see you soon. Who knows when? I'll see you soon. Bye.